Bonjour. Okay, bonjour. So this is a further video on the perfect tense. There are two other videos that I've done about the perfect tense, and really you should look back over those videos because this has no explanation to this video. It's just some practice exercise just to see how we're doing with it. These are quite complicated though, so they're aimed really at year 9 and year 10, and we're just going to have a look at some practice really. So don't forget, the perfect tense is a past tense talking about what you've done recently, action that's completed, like I read a book or I listened to music. They're completed actions in the past. So we're going to have a go at some practice exercises. So we're going to pause the video and you're going to have a look at those. So there we've got 10 sentences, 10 starter sentences. You can finish those sentences off if you like as you're doing this, but you should pause the video in a moment and you can have a go at them. So just to remind you about how we're doing this, you should be thinking about whether this is a je suis verb, whether these things are on the Castor diagram, or whether they're not on the Castor diagram. And if they are on the Castor diagram, your sentence would start with je suis, or if it's not je suis, then it would be going down that same side. You need to have your notes really, going down that same side. So il est, perhaps for he, or nous sommes for we, and you go down that side. If it's not a je suis verb, if it's not on the Castor diagram, you would need to start off with j'ai, or you go down that same verb until you get to the person that you need. So if you want to say we did something, you would say nous avons. So you need to think about it. Again, you need to go back over another video if you're not sure what I'm talking about. So, and then obviously the past participle. Some of these past participles are a bit irregular. I will put some of them in the comment section below, but you need to look them up on the internet or in a book and try and figure out what they are. You might know some of them already. So have a pause of the video now and have a go at some of these exercises, some of these sentences. Okay, so number 1, we've got I ate. So we're just going to talk you through it really. So again, the first thing we do is we think, is it on the Castor diagram? Is there anyone eating anything on the Castor diagram? There isn't. Is there any movement in eating? Well, there is a little bit. Your arm moves, and your jaw moves, I suppose, but there's not really any movement in terms of your whole body. So it's not a je suis verb, it is a j'ai verb. And so the answer would be j'ai mangé. The accent on the E, because it's a normal ER verb really. So j'ai mangé chez Nando's. I ate at Nando's, perhaps. Number 2 is I was born. And again, the first thing you do is you ask yourself, is born on the Castor diagram? And the answer is yes. Is there movement in terms of changing location or changing state? And the answer is yes, there is, because you're going to being alive in the world. So it is on the Castor diagram, and therefore you should start your sentence with je suis. And the past participle of je suis, or to be born, is né. And so that is why the answer would be je suis né. Why is there an extra E in brackets? Because if you're a girl, you need to put the extra E on. If you're a boy, you don't. Technically, when I say you need to, girls, if you don't do it, then technically it's wrong. So it has to go on there if you're a girl. It's still pronounced je suis né, but it needs to be on if you're a girl. So je suis né à Stockport, je suis né à Manchester, je suis né en Angleterre, I was born in England, je suis né en hiver, I was born in winter, je suis né en avril, I was born in April, something like that. Number 3, he went. So now we're getting a bit more complicated because all this is mixed up, obviously. Now we're getting a bit more complicated because we're not talking about I anymore, we're talking about he. So the first thing we still need to do the same things. We're still need to go through the same steps. If you're saying went, so that's the verb to go, is that a verb of movement? Yes, definitely is. Is it on the Castor diagram? Yes, it definitely is. So if you wanted to say I went, it would be je suis allé, but we don't want to say I went, so we have to go down that same verb, je suis, tu es, il est, and therefore you would say il est allé, he went. We don't need an extra E because it's a boy, it's a male. Il est allé, he went somewhere. Il est allé à Manchester. Il est allé en France, he went to France, something like that. Number 4, she stayed. So again, we're not talking about I anymore, we're getting a little bit more complex. So again, the verb to stay, we need to ask ourselves, is that on the Castor diagram? Well, it's a bit of a weird one, but yes, it is on the Castor diagram because it's like the opposite of movement. So that's a bit strange, but it is there in the bottom right corner. It's the verb to stay. The verb to stay is rester. So if it was I stayed, you would say je suis resté. But we don't want to say I stayed. We want to say she stayed. So we have to go down that verb. Je suis, tu es, il est, elle est resté. And this time, on the end of resté, we're going to have an extra E. Because it's not optional, it must be there. Because she is feminine and therefore we need an E on the end. Elle est restée. She stayed. Elle est restée dans un hôtel. She stayed in a hotel. Elle est restée chez les grands-parents. She stayed with her grandparents. Something like that. Number 5. We listened. So again, we followed the steps. Is listening on the Casa diagram? No. Is it a verb of movement? No. So therefore, it's not a je suis verb. It's going to be a j'ai verb. So, if it was I listened, you would say j'ai écouté. But we don't want to say I listened, we want to say we listened, so we have to go down that verb. J'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, nous avons. So it would be nous avons écouté. We listened. Nous avons écouté. We don't need an extra E or an extra S because this is a j'ai verb, an avoir verb. Okay, super. Hopefully we're following this. Number 6 is the verb to fall. So they fell. Masculine is a verb to fall. So again, we have to ask ourselves the first question. Is fall on the Casa diagram? Yes, it is. Is there movement involved? Yes, it is. Unfortunately, you're going from the top of a wall to the bottom to the ground. You're falling, you're moving the whole way. So it is on the Casa diagram. So if you wanted to, and the verb to fall is tomber, a normal ER verb. So if you wanted to say a regular ER verb, so if you wanted to say I fell, it would be je suis tombé. But we don't want to say I fell, we want to say they fell. So you have to go all the way down that verb. Je suis, tu es, il est, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. So it should be ils sont tombés. And on the end of tombé, you need to have an S, not an E, but an S, because there's more than one. You don't need an E because it's masculine, but you do need an S because there's more than one person. Ils sont tombés. They fell. Good, super. Number 7, they went home. So again, ask ourselves, this is a group of girls, so it went home, female. They went home. So it is going home on the Casa diagram. Well, yes, yes, it is. It should be. It's going home. There's movement definitely there. Going from one place, you're going from the castle and you're going home to your house. So therefore, it's definitely movement. So if you wanted to say, and the verb to go home is rentrer. It's like a special verb, just means to go home. Rentrer. Looks a bit like re-enter, but rentrer is the verb to go home. So if you wanted to say I went home, it would be je suis rentré. But we don't want to say I went home. We want to say they, feminine, went home, and therefore we need to say go down that verb again. So, je suis, tu es, il est, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont, elles sont. So it would be elles sont rentrées. And this time, you need an extra E on the end because it's a group of girls or a group of women. And you also need an S because there's more than one girl. Elles sont rentrées. If you got that one right, really well done. Elles sont rentrées. Number 8. This is a bit of a tricky one maybe. He jumped. So again, you should ask yourself, is jump on the Casa diagram? Well, it's not. I know you might think jumping's movement, but you can just jump up and down on the spot. You don't have to move from one place to another. And I've never seen anyone jumping down the road in the morning going to work or going to school. So you're not moving from one place to another, you're just jumping around. So it's not on the Casa diagram, and it doesn't really involve moving from one location to another. So therefore, I understand why maybe you might have put on the je suis side, but it isn't. So it's on the j'ai side. So if you and the verb to jump is sauter. If you might have heard that word before. So anyway, if you wanted to say I jumped, it would be j'ai sauté. But we don't want to say I jumped, we want to say he jumped. So you have to go down. J'ai, tu as, il a. So il a sauté. He jumped. Just to remind you as well that we should always have 3 words in French, usually 2 in English, but 3 words in French. If you just put il sauter, then you're missing out the middle word and it's not right. So it's il a sauté. Number 9, she arrived. Again, we ask ourselves, is arrive on the Casa diagram? Yes, it is. Someone's arriving from somewhere. So that's definitely a verb of movement. You're going from your house and you're arriving at the castle. So she arrived. So it's a je suis verb. And if you want to say I arrived, it would be je suis arrivé. But we don't want to say I arrived. We want to say she arrived. So we have to go down. Je suis, tu es, il est, elle est. So it would therefore be elle est arrivée. And at the end of arrivée, you're going to need to add an extra e because she is feminine and therefore you need e on the end. So elle est arrivée, she arrived. Boys, you need to add the extra e on as well there because she's a girl, doesn't matter what your gender is, it's about the girl. So she arrived, elle est arrivée. And finally, number 10 is we drank. This is a bit of an irregular verb, to drink, just like in English, but we ask ourselves the question, is there anyone drinking on the Casa diagram? No, not really. No, not at all, in fact. Is it a verb of movement? Well, no, you don't have to move your whole body to drink something. So it's not a je suis verb, it is a j'ai part. And again, if you wanted to say I drank, you would say j'ai bu. But we don't want to say I drank, we want to say we drank. So we have to go down, j'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, nous avons. So it would be nous avons bu. We drank. If anyone's put an S on the end of bu, then we don't do that because you don't need to add any extra letters onto the j'ai part, the j'ai side of the column. You don't add any extra letters on when it's an avoir verb. Just the Casa diagram verbs add the extra letter. So nous avons bu. We drank. So hopefully that was a bit tricky because it was supposed to be, but hopefully you've managed to cope with it, have to think it through. So you always need to think, is it on the Casa diagram or is it not? And then you need to make some changes about who you want to say. If you want to say I, you say je suis or j'ai. If you want to say some other person like we or he or she, you have to think it through. Okay. Again, if you want some extra practice on that, you can go to Languages Online, and there's lots of extra practice on the perfect tense, and you could do that and see if you get those things right. Okay. Merci. Au revoir. À bientôt.